Namaste. Good morning. Welcome. So, my road to rapture, day 6. Just gonna let this music play out. This is beautiful sacred dance music by Kamari and Manvir. Thank you guys for letting me use your music. Hi, good morning. Well, it's good morning here in London, and it's a really stormy morning. Oh my gosh, what a change. The trees, I can see them outside, are like waving like this. The rain is lashing down, the wind is blowing. So it's a very dramatic morning here in London as we come to day 6 of my road to rapture. Thank you for being here to join me and to all of you who watch this back. So today's live is called From Trauma to Tantra, my second awakening. And before I go and launch into today's sharing, let me just say hello and introduce myself for anyone who doesn't know who I am. I'm Shakti Sundari. I'm a priestess of love and sacred sexuality. And I'm here to talk about my road to rapture, which is 2 things. It's how I came to write this book, Rapture, A Guide to Sexual and Spiritual Awakening for Women, which is due on sale on October the 9th. But it's also my own journey, which underpins everything I share and write about in the book. It's my own journey from being a sexless single mum to becoming a sacred sexual priestess and everything that I learned and experienced along the way. The book, as I've said, is going on sale on October the 9th. There's a book launch event, which you're very welcome to join. I'll put all the information below in the comments at the end. There's also a course that goes with the book, which is running for the 3rd live round starting on October 28th. I'll put that information below. But let's get on with the sharing, because this is the juicy stuff from trauma to Tantra. So, I left off in the last video speaking about moving back to London, moving back to the UK. After having lived in the States for 6 years, my life had completely shifted orientation from being an academic, pursuing her PhD in social anthropology, to becoming a mum, something I really, really desired at that point in my life. Being a geriatric pregnancy, because I was in my late 30s when I had my kids, and things going a little bit wrong during the first birth, which created a trauma, a physiological, physical, but also emotional and spiritual trauma for me as a result of the fact that it was then painful and I found it impossible to have penetrative sex. And that created a whole spiral of unfolding of events. So basically, fast forward 6 years, I returned to London, which I consider my home city, the city where I felt most at home in the world, even though I'm a very international person. And returning with my husband, although we were separating, and my 2 young children. They were 3 and 5 at the time. I had no job. I had no friends really left, apart from 1 or 2, because I'd been gone for 6 years and everybody had moved away or moved on in their lives. And no support network really, because my family were, well, my family's just different, let's just put it that way. But the main thing was, in this story, that I'd not had sex for 4.5 years. Anyone who's married, anyone who's been in a long-term relationship, anyone who's suffered the birth trauma will probably relate to that and the difficulties that can unfold as a result. But I've shared about that in all of my previous lives. But what I really want people to understand is that when I talk about this, I know that it can sound very, and I can make it sound, you know, like sex is about fun, sex is about pleasure, sex is about ecstasy, you know, and there can be this very, in this country, in the UK in particular, there can be this very sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink attitude towards sex and sexuality, or to a woman speaking about her sexual pleasure. But what I really want to underscore is that it goes a lot deeper than that. A lot deeper. I want people to understand that this isn't the story of someone who's just trying to get the best sex in the whole world and it's that superficial. It's a lot deeper. When I discovered that it was painful to have sex and that I couldn't enjoy sex anymore, I was absolutely devastated. I grieved. It was like somebody had died. And people who don't understand this don't understand the feminine and women's sexuality. And let me just read a couple of quotes to kind of highlight how when we reconnect with our sexuality as women, when we begin to understand our bodies, when we begin to understand our womb and our yoni and our sexual sacredness, we come to understand that our womb, that our yoni, that our beautiful vulva and our sexual energy are intimately connected with our mental and psychological well-being, with our emotional well-being, and with our physical well-being, as well as with our sense of spiritual connection to all of life. David Dedar, I haven't got his book in front of me, who writes very much about sexuality from a masculine tantric perspective. If you don't know any of his works, check out Dear Lover and The Way of the Superior Man. They're kind of classics for anybody who wants to understand themselves and this part of their life more fully and deeply. He understood it, and I'm just going to read a quote. For most women, emotional openness, sexual openness, and spiritual openness are all part of the same simple gesture of trust, relaxation, and love. In fact, for many women, their deepest sexual experiences are their deepest spiritual experiences. So he got it. In my own journey of healing and coming to understand my experience and what had happened, because the medical system certainly wasn't going to help me. There were no women I knew who could help me. So I had to do the inner work and the research to find my own healing. And I came across this book, Vagina by Naomi Wolf. It's a brilliant book. She's a brilliant woman. I so admire her. And oh my God, I don't know if you can hear it, it's literally crashing rain against my windows right now. So the dramatic weather is kind of highlighting what I'm going to read. I guess, I mean, it's a very big, thick, intellectual, deep book, but she does her own research through her own body, but also through meeting and interviewing loads of experts and loads of women. And what she discovers is exactly what I've said, that a woman's creativity, a woman's confidence, a woman's happiness, a woman's sense of well-being, a woman's sense of spiritual connection to life and to nature and to her inner wisdom, her goddess self actually, is directly connected to her sexuality and her capacity for full sexual expression and full sexual enjoyment, which, as she discovered in her book, is not the experience for many, many, many women. And what she saw as a result, for example, of the extreme cases of women who had been raped or suffered some kind of sexual abuse, women who experienced some kind of trauma to the vulva or the vagina, as a result that the pudendal nerve was trapped or affected in some way, or other vaginal trauma, women who'd experienced female genital mutilation, and then kind of, well, just to speak about those kinds of extreme examples, they literally were depressed, lacking in affect, lacking in creativity, feeling like they'd lost a part of themselves, feeling that they weren't whole anymore. You know, it goes this deep. And this is what I had been experiencing. Like a part of me literally had been amputated. That's what it felt like. And this wonderful book, you know, really supports women's experience, because what she also discovered is that women are not heard. Women are not believed. Women are not trusted. when they go to their doctors or the gynecologist and speak about these things, just as I wasn't. So I had to go and find the answer for myself. And around that, just reading another quote, so more broadly, what it also comes down to is women not understanding and being connected to their own anatomy and physiology and arousal pathways, not being educated, partly because the education isn't there. If we just rely upon school, parents, doctors, they don't know. But also men not being educated about women, and women not being educated about men. So everyone's having like really average, mediocre sex, not understanding the differences that need to be addressed. So what she says around that particular thing is, if a man follows this culture's sexual script about what the vagina is, what female sexuality is, and how in general to relate to a woman, he is very likely, against all of his dearest wishes and best intentions, to miss over time knowing what is necessary to keep her aroused. The most destructive thing that men are being taught about women is that the vagina is just a sexual organ, and that sex for women is a sexual act in the same way it is for men. But neither gender is being taught about the delicate mind, heart, body connection that it turns out is female sexual response. I'm going to read that part again. The delicate mind, heart, body connection that is female sexual response. In my own book, Rapture, I have a chapter which is entitled Sex is for the All of You, which speaks to this, how we have been conditioned to conceive of our bodies, our vaginas, our sexuality as separate and distinct, because that is the patriarchal thinking, and the patriarchal framework is to separate and hone in on one thing, right? But that is not how we are designed, and that is not how we are function. If we want to understand and if we want to experience the potential available to us sensually, sexually, spiritually, and in life, we need to reconnect the dots and understand that what's going on sexually is connected to what's going on psychically, psychologically, emotionally, and mentally. It's all interconnected. So, yeah, I could go on, but I'm going to carry on with my story to keep to time. So here I am, back in London. Exciting. London, after being in suburban America, like, oh my God, suburban America. I felt like my hands were handcuffed together. I felt stifled. I had to get out. So it was escaping from suburban America, but also this deep yearning to come back to a city, to come back to the UK, to be in London cosmopolitan culture. And actually, even at that point, and this is worth noting, for some reason I had this awareness of the West Country, and I think the word Glastonbury. I didn't know anything about it at that point, nothing. But I remember feeling that right back then. So it was 2006, back in London. I had some free time and I began to go to the 5 Rhythms. I was a teacher of a conscious dance practice myself, so dance is my absolute passion and joy in life. Dance is my self-fulfillment. Dance is my passion. Dance is my connection to God, Goddess. You know, dance is my life. So I'd already discovered the 5 Rhythms, but in London there were loads of classes. So I began to go regularly to the 5 Rhythms. And one night while dancing, I had a few beautiful dances with a really lovely man, and we chatted afterwards, and we connected and we began to date. And he was not British. Again, this is one of the things I love about London, such an international city. And again, as you know, if you've heard my previous lives, I love the international thing. But what was important about him was that he was a sannyas. So this is, he was an Osho sannyas. So he was a follower of the spiritual teacher Osho, who is one of the teachers who brought Tantra to the West. And he was a meditator, and he'd been following that path, I think, for at least 10 years before meeting me. So he was a sannyas, and he had some understanding of of Tantra, and he was a dedicated meditator. I'd never met anyone like this before, but my life had already pivoted from academia and business to conscious embodiment. This was now what my life and my work was about, was teaching conscious dance and conscious embodiment. So, you know, he was ahead of me in some things, and it was wonderful to be with someone who had this level of understanding. Eventually the time came where we both felt like we wanted to make love, and I told him about told him about my experience. I told him I hadn't had sex for 4.5 years. I told him I was scared. I told him it had been painful the last time that I'd tried. Told him the whole story, so he understood the whole context. And we made love, and it was beautiful. It was multi-orgasmic. It was pain-free. So what made the difference? Well, you know, we can speculate about that, but I'll tell you what I believe. So one is, there was physical healing that needed to happen, and obviously there'd been a lot of time for that to happen. Secondly, I believe that with my husband, I had nursed a huge amount of resentment towards him that I was not aware of. I'd repressed it, and that I had not communicated. And I believe that that repressed resentment, as well as the trauma of the birth, was residing in my vagina. And she was saying, no way are you coming in here. Nope. But also in terms of that context with this new lover, there were some things that were really different that allowed me to open. And remember that for a woman, having sex, making love is an opening, a huge opening and a huge letting go. It's a very vulnerable place to go into as we open our energy field, as we open our body, as we open our hearts, as we open our whole being. This is a huge gesture, as David Data understands, of surrender and trust and love and letting go. So what made the difference for me with this new lover was he listened. I felt safe to tell him everything that had happened in my past, and cry and be vulnerable about it. We took things very slowly. He caressed and aroused every single part of my body for a long time. There was no pressure to get to intercourse. There was no pressure to climax. There was no pressure to get anywhere. I felt safe. I desired him. And as a result of him coming towards me with these qualities, I felt aroused. He was present. So as a meditator, he knew how to be. It wasn't like he was trying to do something. He simply was present. He was there in the room with me, eye to eye, body to body, present, not distracted. This is huge for a woman, for a man to be fully present, right? But he was also, because of his presence, responsive in his touch. Not just following some routine, but noticing how I was responding, noticing how I was breathing, noticing how I was moving, and then dancing with that, right? The call and response of aware lovemaking. There was passion. And I guess if you wanted to take the tantric element out of it and simplify it, there was a huge amount of foreplay, which again I speak about in my book, Rapture. It's not just about going through a routine systematically of touch point A, touch point B, touch point C. It starts before that. Foreplay starts in the interaction that you're having with the man in terms of how he was responding to you. Is he listening? Is he present? Is he displaying love, respect, care? Then I begin to open and become more available for sexual intimacy, right? So it starts outside the bedroom, before that, in the whole context of the relationship. But then as we move into physical intimacy, foreplay is about the unpressured, sensual, present exploration of moment by moment intimacy between the two, without a goal, without rushing, without wanting to get to penetration in 5 minutes, right? So as a result of all of these factors, multi-orgasmic, pain-free from the get-go. Oh, and the other things I forgot to mention is, yes, he could also control whether to ejaculate or not. So again, as I'd said in a previous live, this was part of my normal anyhow, but yeah. He also taught me and showed me things as a result of what he understood of Tantra. In hindsight, actually his knowledge wasn't that deep and profound, but he taught me some really important things about the polarity of masculine and feminine energies, about the quality of receptivity in the feminine, which nobody had ever spoken to me about. I'd never heard about that. And in guiding me deeper into my own receptivity and my own letting go, one of the most powerful things that I experienced was that it was in going into receptivity that I experienced the deepest orgasmic pleasure I'd known. So rather than chasing something, as my body was patterned to do, in quite a masculine way actually, rather than chasing something or gripping for something with my muscles, to surrender and let go and become receptive. And as my yoni became more receptive, whoa, huge waves of energy and pleasure, receptivity. But again, that is a quality that we have to cultivate in our whole being, not just in the bedroom. There's so much more I could say to that, but I'm just gonna skip forward now to what happened after that. So how delicious it was for me to experience this reawakening and this reconnection to my sexuality, I cannot tell you. And once again, I bow to this man for that experience. Like, oh my gosh, so grateful. And everything within me blossoming and flourishing as a result, right? Of course, when we experience that level of opening, that level of connection, that level of intimacy and pleasure, we feel radiant, alive, creative, confident, and juicy, of course. So then Tantra was a word that was in my consciousness as a result of him. And people had also previously said to me when I was teaching dance back in the States that I had a lot of Kundalini energy and I didn't know what they were talking about. But I began to take Kundalini yoga classes and then look for opportunities to explore Tantra. And of course in London there were a lot. So I went to my very first Tantra workshop and it was run by Ma Ananda Sarita. And wow, revelation. A whole community of people who felt like me and suddenly recognizing, oh my God, there's a place in the world where I belong, where there are people like me. And it was such a revelation. I had some incredible experiences and made some incredible friendships in that first Tantra workshop. People that I'm still in touch with today. But then it was the second Tantra workshop that I went to. This one was run by Leora Lightwoman, where I had kind of a next level experience that was another step for me on the path and another invitation towards, I guess, what on some level my desire was pulling me towards, my soul was calling me to, and really that catalyzed the unfolding of me becoming who I am in terms of the work that I do now. So in this workshop, again, there were many, many experiences, but the one that stands out in my mind now as I look back, and it's a long time ago, is standing in this room with sexual energy flowing, coursing, rippling through my body. And it felt like this was happening for a long time. It felt like 30, 40, 50 minutes. I don't know how long it was, but it went on for a long time. All that I was doing was standing on the earth with my feet. And yes, there'd been some stuff before that, but to get to that point, it was very easy and very natural, and sexual energy, Shakti, Kundalini, was flowing through my whole body. I was crying, I was snorting, I was roaring, I was laughing, going through all different emotional states. I guess if you saw somebody having that experience and you didn't know what was happening, you could be a little bit freaked out. For me, there was such a bliss and such a relief and such, finally, of experiencing this flow through my body and absolutely knowing this is where I was meant to be, this is what was meant to be happening, this is part of what I'd been searching for. Such a relief. Clearing, without talking about it, without psychologically analyzing it, forget all that. Wounds, traumas, things that happened to me I didn't even know. I just sensed that they were clearing through all that was moving energetically, emotionally. Everything was moving out and through and beyond me, connecting to states of joy and ecstasy I had never even dreamt were possible, releasing huge waves of grief and repulsion and anger, all of it. This, I knew, was the path that I wanted to be on. Again, wasn't like a rational, logical thought, or if I do this then that. It was just like, aha, this is what I'm meant to be doing. I'm diving in. I left that workshop profoundly heart opened, ecstatic, soft, full of radiant energy. The slightest thing, like just looking out the window and seeing the sun or feeling the breeze on my cheek, could set off tremors and ripples of orgasmicness in my body. And that was just the beginning. As I recount that, I feel that energy within me now. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful energy to know inside the body, inside the being, as a wellspring of well-being, of creativity, of truth, of love, of power. And this is what we're all being called to, is to remember embody, recognize and live from connection with this true expression of the divine feminine. Tomorrow I'm going to continue just moving through how my life, career and everything just completely took on this new tantric direction from there on. And yeah, there's a lot more to say. We'll wait for tomorrow for that. And just want to remind those of you watching that you're warmly welcome to the book launch event, an all-day online event on Saturday, October the 9th. I'll put the link below. My book Rapture is on sale on the same day. And there's a course that I teach that goes along with the book that's launching for the 3rd round on October 28th. I really recommend, based on my own experience, this experience of journeying with a mentor, with a guide, because yes, as I've already shared, when we touch into this energy, when we touch into this, everything that we've not encountered within ourselves, everything that was denied, everything that was repressed, everything that was shut down, it all begins to surface. And without guidance, without mentoring, without support, that can be quite challenging. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching, for being here, for supporting me. I'd love to hear if you have any questions or shares or insights to add. And feel free to share the video as well so we can reach more people. Lots of love. Have a beautiful day. And look, the storm is quieting down now. We've been through the eye of the storm and we're coming out the other side. Namaste.